Hello, it's a year since the shooting of that last video, and I wanted to provide some updates. One of them is to dive back into Maine politics as a hashtag, mepolitics. What I'm going to do now is do an import from the Twitter search network. I'm going to replicate my work. I'm going to call it mepolitics. Now that I'm in 2013, and today is the 28th, I want to have mepolitics posts since 2013, 09, and 21, which is a week ago. I am not interested in replies but I am interested in mentions or tweets. Well, why don't I take a look at replies? Let's see what happens with replies. And let's not limit. Now, there's no check mark for you to uncheck here for your limits, but I'm going to just take the limit off by increasing my limit to 2,000. I do want to add, I could add a tweet column and URLs. I could add a statistic, but I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, for the URLs and expanding that. I would like to be able to know what the tweet is, so I'll take a look at that. And I do have a Twitter account. You have a Twitter account too. I expect you to authorize it. If you need to, you click that middle option right there. I'm going to go ahead, and I understand this may take a long time, so I'm going to let it get started, and I will get back to you when that information is ready. Okay, it didn't actually take too long. So let's take a look and see what we got. Here's our new network. Now, notice that I still have an image of my Les Miserables network, random distribution. I don't want it to look like that when you do that work. But I have data on my left-hand side which are no longer about Les Miserables. And if I look around, I'll notice none of this is about Les Miserables. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that when I import, I've set my options, and you can check to make sure you do this too, to make sure that I clear the NodeXL workbook before new data is imported. So every time I import, I get new data, and I get rid of the old stuff. There are reasons you might not want to do this, in which case you'd uncheck that box. But I've checked that box, so when I refresh, I will have new data. And when I do, wow, look what has changed in 1 year. First thing to notice is that there are just a whole lot of nodes there, a whole lot of people. Some of them engaged in these little circles, which are self-referential messages, but wow, a lot of people now engaged in communications. How many? Okay, no longer in the 200s, but 503 minus 2, 501 now. So this is an information channel that by following it over time, I've been able to show that it's expanded. Interestingly, there's some folks outside of Maine that are using this. Fox News. Yeah, Fox News is being included in this network in some manner. Liz Winstead, another national figure. Vanity Fair, Policy Mike, which is an interesting social media forum for blog posts on the subject of politics. So that is a social media forum that is being referenced by another social media reference. Jim Inhofe, who is a senator. Wow, this is great stuff. If you're into politics, he's a senator from the middle of the country. You could really take a look at the content of who's participating, what's their party affiliation, what's their ideology, and have lots of interesting questions that you could answer. I'm going to ask you to do that at the end of the semester, to do a research paper on this kind of data generation. But for right now, I just want you to practice visualizing. So, okay, let's go back up to the top. O'Reilly factor. Wow, interesting stuff. Wow. Okay, keep going. Right. Let's keep looking. How many edges are there between these 501 folks? A lot. Take 2,712, subtract 2, and you have 2,700 communications. That's a lot of people communicating. Okay, how can we begin to organize this all? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use what is referenced in Golbeck as a spring embedding format. Read the chapter if you don't remember what that is, but it's the Harrell-Cohen fast multiscale, which says two individuals that are tied are pulled together. Individuals who are not tied to each other are not pulled together. And that simple embedding of springs to talk about connection and disconnection creates a much more sensible picture. I'm going to do the same thing I did. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, which is to do some bundling. So I right-click, go to Graph Options, and I'm going to bundle tight and refresh and check that out. So now that's telling me that there are really a few interesting areas going on in here. There's clearly a center, and there's a periphery out there, okay, of individuals. That's interesting. I want to know who is in the center, who's in the periphery. What do they have to say? Well, how could I figure that out? There really are a few ways for us to do that. Okay, I could go through and I could label some individuals, but who do I label? Am I going to create labels for all 503 individuals? Let's see what happens if I do. I could do that. I could take all these vertex names and I could select them by left-clicking and then dragging. Then I Control-C for copy, and I could head over to the label column and paste them all in. And I could say, well, I'm just going to look at all the names of all these nodes. And let's see what that's going to look like. Chaos. Absolute sheer chaos. Is this working as a visualization? Doesn't look like it's working for me. The most we can do is we can notice a few areas of interest. If we zoom in here by clicking zoom and then head over using the hand to drag us around. Wow, it's a lot of people, isn't it? Over to the lower right-hand side, we see that there are two folks on the periphery of this network, Emily Ann Kane and Kane for Congress, interesting, who are referencing each other. So clearly they're coordinating in some fashion. That's sort of interesting, but it's an exception to the rule, which is this bunch of people in the middle who are participating in this wild free-for-all. So that's not working. For a smaller network, it might do quite well. For Les Miserables, it does very well, especially if we take good care to think about how those individuals are being placed. I'm going to refresh that graph now to get rid of those labels. What else could I do? I could use image files. One of the great things that NodeXL does is it takes the publicly available, all this is public information, the publicly available profile pictures of accounts. So why is that useful? I'll show you. Because you could then take as your image, you have your image file already listed, you can select a shape. And one of the options for a shape is, look at that number 11 right there. If you put in an 11, it is the image. So I could simply say, let's make all these nodes 11, 11, so on and so forth. Let's make them all, there's a little box down there. If I select that, I can fill this with 11s. I'm left clicking and dragging on that little tiny black box down there. Okay, I could refresh that. And what am I going to get? What do you think I'm going to get? I think, again, I'm probably going to get, first of all, an overload of my computer. And the second thing I'm going to get is chaos. Okay, so clearly showing images costs a lot more in computer time than just showing dots. And second, those images are all going to overlap on top of one another. Right? In fact, it's overlapping so much, wow, that it's really pretty, but there's so much overlap I can't see everybody. I just can't. I know why. I could look in here and poke around for a while, but it's not really helping me that much. I can see a few interesting folks. I see Toms of Maine in the upper right. If you look in the lower left, you see the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation. Okay, that's great, but again, it's not working. It looks pretty, it looks busy, it looks important, but it's not telling me information. And remember that just because a visualization looks cool doesn't mean that it's informative. So, no, this is just not going to work here. I'm going to take that information out. When I visualize a relatively large graph, and let me be clear, with just 502 participants, I say just, right? That used to be huge for social network analysts like yourself, but now it's considered small. And just 2,710 connections, even with that small size, we have to be a little bit selective. We have to figure out what to emphasize, what to de-emphasize when we're drawing our graph. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to bring back in the subject matter of the last few weeks, which is our network metrics. Why did I make you learn about closeness centrality, betweenness centrality, degree? The reason is because those represent ideas. Degree, who's the most gregarious, out degree? Who's the most popular, in degree? Who is closest to all the others in terms of network distance, of referring to each other and mentioning to each other? Who's in, that's closeness. Who's in the middle? Who's the most in between in all these conversations? Who's the broker between different groups? Talking on Twitter about Maine politics. That's betweenness centrality. It means something. And fortunately, this is the really good part. NodeXL allows you to let the computer calculate this, so you don't have to sit down and work through all the mathematics. 501 nodes? Forget it. You don't want to calculate, all the distances to all the other nodes. It'd take you forever. What you can do then is you can let graph metrics take care of that. So I clicked graph net metrics in the NodeXL tab. I can get some overall graph metrics. I can find out how many vertices there are. I can count that myself, but I could calculate it. How many edges there are. Okay. The number of edges that have duplicates that occur more than once. Okay. I can find out the maximum geodesic distance. How far is it do you have to go to, between two individuals? Well, I already know that there's a set, if I look up here in the upper right, there's a set of people who are talking to each other using this channel who are not talking to others. So that's really interesting stuff. And I get density. Great. The density of the graph is another interesting characteristic. But I can do more. I can find, this is really a directed network, right? Because this is kind of mentions of one by another. So I want to get in degree and out degree. I could get all kinds of centralities listed. Okay. Boy, what else could I do? if I wanted to have words and word pairs, I could do that by going to the tweet column. Interesting. And then I could go and I could have it skip some words down there, common words. We don't care whether the word the appears, but right, so we keep those common words out. Okay. And I'll just calculate these metrics and we'll see what we get. As you can see, I could calculate some more. And as you can also see, while it's going to take the computer a little bit of time, it's not taking that long for the computer to calculate what it would take you possibly weeks to calculate. So I'm going to sit here now and we'll see what kind of calculations we get. That didn't take long, did it? It's really quite impressive if we think about it. What are we getting now? Some of you have written to me and said, I want to do some cultural analysis. I want to find out, what kind of messages people are sharing over social media. Well, okay, fine. You want to know? Here are, if we go down, look at the bottom, right? Okay, so there are tabs at the top. One is Note Excel, and I always want to keep that selected. And then down at the bottom, there's a whole bunch of tabs, and we just got some new ones added. You always had your edges and vertices, but now you can have some new tabs: overall metrics, words and word pairs. Under words, we find out, well, what is the most common mentioned word? mepolitics. It's the hashtag. We expected that. Every single tweet is going to have mepolitics in it. RT stands for retweet. Then there's main. Okay, I've got it. All for jury. Dirigo Blue. Obamacare. Obamacare is big this week in discussions of Maine politics. The Bangor Daily News, a newspaper, Michaud, who is one of our two members of Congress in the House of Representatives. Of course, we have two senators as well. Then LePage, campaign, and Governor LePage are big. Great. What about word pairs? This gets even more interesting because then we get to figure out, and I'll show you in a future week how we can create a network out of this. We have word pairs. How often do two words show up together? Let's click on that. Well, okay, we've got a list. We've got a count of how often mepolitics shows up with via, 38. Okay. How often do the words emergency and motion show up together? 23 times. Okay. We could go all the way to the bottom. This is going to be ordered by the count, and we find out that law and main only show up twice. That traps and bait only show up twice. Bears and hounds show up twice. That's interesting stuff. We can begin to look, if we're interested in, LePage showed up. Let's look at LePage. Let's sort. Okay, I'm clicking on that triangle at the top. Then I can sort A to Z alphabetically. And now I can go down to L for LePage. Let's find out what shows up most often with LePage. KL, I know my alphabet, right? LePage. mepolitics shows up most of the time. Campaign. Intervention. Michaud. Shave. Okay, there's something interesting going on there. One, trying, budgets, LePage's best. Interesting. If we want to be really thorough, we think, okay, what else is his name going to show up as? Well, governor, right? So let's go to G. GOV. Gov LePage, Gov Team Elliott, Gov McKernan, Gov Ratings, and Gov Jock. Then there's Governor LePage. Nothing. Recently. Campaign Federal. Lied. mepolitics. Warning and rejects. So we are starting to get a picture of the connections that people have in their collective mind when they're talking on Twitter about Maine politics. What do they connect Paul LePage with? there's somebody who's going to be running against him. He formally announced last week, I believe, Elliot Cutler. He ran for governor before. He's running again. Does he show up? Does he show up as often as LePage? No, but we do have Cutler man. Cutler announces. Cutler win. Okay, not as much. He's not showing up as much, but he has some mention in here. So I want you to notice something. I want you to notice that each of those words is itself a node. Okay. Each of those words is connected to another word. And we have a tie strength already. You're going to learn about the strength of ties in a future chapter in much more detail, but that count shows you how strong the tie is, how deep it is, how often it occurs, how much it matters. What you have, in short, is the ability automatically to do a little research in just a few minutes, and you can create a semantic network. Semantics is about words and how they're used and what their meaning is. It's a network of meaning, no longer a network of people. That's really cool if you think about it. I get excited about it. So we have words and word pairs. We also have overall metrics. So we get to find out, yes, there are 500 vertices. Okay, there are 2,710 edges. There are edges that get duplicated. That means they happen over and over again between people. Most of those edges are the ones that happen. There are with duplicates, 1,817. Only 893 of them are unique. That is, just happen once between these two Twitter accounts. The density is really low here. While it looks like there are a lot of ties, there could be many more. 0.004 means that this network is 0.4% full. You could shove 250 times as many ties in there possibly as actually occur. Wow. Okay. Neat stuff. But wait, there's more. Because if we want to visualize, and in this video we're talking about visualization, all of a sudden we have some new columns. We have the tweet itself. That's kind of cool. We have all the URLs that are in the tweet, which is also really cool. We have domains that are in the tweet that are grabbed out. That's really cool. What are the most common web pages that are being referenced? What are the hashtags that are being used? Wow. Other hashtags besides mepolitics. Okay. The tweet date, blah, blah, blah. That's great. That's super. Okay. What we should have here that would be in vertices is a set of, see, I made a mistake. If we look in vertices, we also have a list of calculations you should be familiar with. Degree, in degree and out degree. Shenna Bellows, who is the outgoing head of the ACLU in Maine, just shows up. She's involved in Maine politics. She has an in degree of 10. She has an out degree of 0. So she's not really communicative in getting in touch with other people and referencing them, but she is referenced a whole lot. On the other hand, let's find someone else that we might know. We might have to go with someone we don't know. Wow, okay. Here's somebody else. All for Jury. Now, I don't know who All for Jury is, but All for Jury is a node that has an out degree of 119 and an in degree of 15. What does that mean? This is an account that is blasting out messages. In 1 week, an out degree of 119? 119 references to other accounts? That's some serious business going on here. This is someone that we really want to look at. And as a matter of fact, what can we do? We can use that triangle at the top here. We can sort again, but now we can sort largest to smallest in terms of degree. And what do we find? All for Jury is the top out degree. Who's the top in degree? Largest to smallest. Bangor Daily News. So, and then Governor LePage and Senator Ted Cruz. okay, is receiving a lot. Senator Ted Cruz is not a U.S. Senator for Maine. You should look up who is Senator Ted Cruz. What state is he for? Well, it's not Maine. It starts with a T. Senator Collins is one of our senators in Maine. Senator Angus King is the other, and they are blown away by Senator Ted Cruz this past week. Why is that? Okay, this is substantively meaningful. There's something important going on here. And nobody else besides us right now is probably doing this kind of analysis of the Maine politics hashtag. It's a channel of communication. It's essentially a forum. This is where ideas are being spread. You can see it right now as you select Senator Ted Cruz. Boom, you have these flows of information appearing. They're being visualized here. This is telling us something. It matters. Who is the most between? Let's select that. Okay. All for jury. It's right in the middle of conversations, partly because they inserted themselves there, but also because occasionally they are spoken to. Who's next? Bangor Daily News. Okay. They're in the middle of conversations. Dirigo Blue, which is a political blog, it comes next. And we can go on down the line. Well, now, what matters to us here? What do we want to visualize when we create this network graph? Okay. Well, what matters to you? I can't hear your voice, so I'll pick something here. I want to pick the most popular, most referred to individuals. I'm just going to pick that to start with. I want to know who it is that others that are talking about Maine politics are wanting to talk to the most. So I'm taking those individuals, right? And I've just sorted here, largest to smallest. So I have the highest in degree, Bangor Daily News, Governor LePage, Senator Ted Cruz, Shelley Pingree, right? So that's interesting. Because she's one of our representatives, Senator Collins, A.S. Freed, who is a professor of politics at University of Maine at Orono, political science, and then there's Elliot Cutler, who is being referred to a fair amount, even more than the current Senator Angus King. Okay. So now that I have those individuals, I can say, I'm not going to give everybody an image. I'm not going to give everybody a label, but I'm going to give the top 10, top 20 individuals their own special appearance because they are the most prominent in terms of degree. So I'm going to take those individuals and I am going to, remember this is going to be, I have to subtract 2, so I want to go down to row number 22, Citizens News, it turns out. And I'm going to let those individuals each have an image. What does that do? Okay, it still gives us a little bit of overlap. So maybe I say I need to tone that down. Why don't I take that to the top 10? And why don't I change the size of those? Okay, I could change that size of the images. Let's try, it's between 1 and 1,000. Let's try a 5. I don't know exactly what a 5 will do, but if it's too small, I can make it bigger. If it's too big, I can make it a smaller number. And I'm going to refresh. Okay, well, that was a little too small there. But now you notice none of those images are overlapping. I can go in, I can change that to 10s. There's a lot to do here, right? And I'm going to refresh the graph. Okay, and that's still small. I could take it back up to 20, or I could do things like I could zoom into the center now. And what does the center look like? Well, there's a lot of anonymous folks here. And then, okay, I really will need to make that bigger, but I know that's Amy S. Freed. By rolling over, there's Governor LePage, Elliot Cutler, So I have images that represent those individuals, and I can tell those top 10 are, they're all involved in some fashion. I can do more than that. I can think about doing some characterizing of individuals according to their degree in a way that doesn't create a massive headache. Okay. Oh, by the way, I could have, for all those images associated, just for those top 10, a label. I could have taken these and I could have pasted them in label as well. I'm going to erase those options, and instead I'm going to use something called autofill, and it does something neat. I'll show you. What it does is, well, see, I could go in and I could take each one of those. There's Emily Ann Kane again. Come on, Emily Ann Kane. Let's select you. Oh, that's right. I have to. This is the select tooltip. It's an arrow. I'm going to select Emily Ann Kane. I could give her particular node. I could give her a color, and I could literally write it in here. Blue. Let's make you blue, and let's make you a what kind of shape? Let's make you a. I could literally write in diamond. Try writing in different shapes. Not all shapes will work, but diamond should. And let's make you size 300. And opacity is between 0 and 100. Let's make you 50% opaque, which means you could kind of see through the node. That's kind of an interesting thing to be able to happen. And let's label you. I could do that. Okay. To do that took about 45 seconds. And there's Emily Ann Kane right down here. She's labeled with a diamond, and she has a label to her name, and it's a little pale because it's 50% opaque. That's lovely, but that took me a minute. Now, if I have 501 nodes, am I going to want to spend 501 minutes arranging this network? I don't think so. Although it's a lovely shade of blue, it's going to take me much too long, right? So I want to save her image, but I'm going to delete those references, and I'm going to use autofill instead. Autofill, under the Node XL ribbon, allows me to select properties of either edges or vertices or groups. We'll talk about groups another time. Really interesting stuff, groups. And it allows me to say, let's select all edges that have a particular, let's reset them all, okay, that have a particular characteristic. For instance, I could set edge opacity according to the relationship date. Okay? So I could make more recent edges appear in a different fashion. Okay. That might be interesting. I don't think I'm going to do that. Yes, I'll reset them all. I could change it to see whether this is by latitude or longitude. So if I do that, you'll notice in some edges there's a geolocation that's added. How many? Well, let's go check on that. How many people actually geolocate themselves? These are empty. Okay, they look full, but that's just because the Twitter page for the tweet is listed, right? So the actual place is empty. Oh, there's 1. There's 2. There's 3, 4, 5. 5 whole individuals in the entire network who have decided to add their latitude and longitude. Do I really want to label the edges according to that? Probably not. It's not going to work. The tweet date might be interesting. I could do that because it looks like every tweet has a date. Okay. I could try that. What's more interesting to me right now, because we've been talking about things like centrality and degree is that I have that calculated for every node. So I could go back to autofill, and let's select vertices. And let's reset here. Yes, we don't want to use latitude, so I'm going to clear it by hitting the reset button. I'm going to go to vertices, and I'm going to say, let's select opacity, how opaque these are. I could select size, make them bigger or smaller, but I'm going to select opacity according to, let's say degree. Let's make this out degree here this time, okay? Who's the biggest poster? And who's referencing others the most? So when I go to options, it says, I want to map, which means assign, really, the smallest number in the column, okay, to an opacity of 10%, only 10% there. The largest number in the column is going to have 100% opacity, which means it's solid. You can't see through it at all. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to autofill. And let's see what happens. I don't know what'll happen. Wow. What happens is something really interesting. Okay? What I see when I look at that visualization is an affirmation of something neat. It's an affirmation that most of the individuals who are on the outside, okay, who are not central, are also individuals who don't have a high out degree. They're not referencing others. Most of the highly opaque individuals that we see, the individuals with darker dots, are those in the middle. And I think we can figure out who this individual is here. All for jury. A big out degree, sending out lots of tweets, and is also visualized in this Herald Core and Fast Multiscale, the Spring embedded, as in the center of the network. Now, does the visualization, the Herald Core and visualization, does that correspond to these other kinds of centralities? This is in the middle of the picture. Are they actually in the middle of the network? Well, we could check that. We could check that by saying, let's make our opacity not be out degree, but let's make it closeness centrality. Okay, let's autofill that. No. Okay. Why? Okay. Well, these numbers are in here are interesting dots. Well, because there's something interesting going on here. For closeness centrality, there's a set of folks, and I'm gonna highlight them and select them so I know who they are. Justin LeBurge, WW Beck 0. Oh, right, gotta select them again. Code Pink Main. Tia. I don't know who Tia is, but these are accounts. Kristen Agan. These are individuals who are all referring to each other, who are all really close to each other, and they're not referring largely to others. In fact, if I select more carefully, I think we might find that there are individuals who are only referring to one another. So they're very close to the others that they are connected to, that they don't have an infinite distance to. Because they're so close on average to the others that they're connected to, they form their own component, it looks like, right? Yeah, they're not tied to the rest of the network at all. They are very close in their centrality to one another. Wow, that tells us that that kind of centrality is not always the same as something, you're connected, not always the same as something like out degree. Well, I'm going to lock these individuals these nodes, these vertices, by hitting the lock icon. Okay, and actually I'm going to shove them farther over into the corner and hit the lock icon again to hold them in place. Then I'm going to refresh that graph again. Okay, keep them out. Oh, I noticed there are 4 individuals here, right? As I refresh and I hold interesting individuals off to the side, I see more nodes that are selecting themselves out. That's really interesting stuff. But I'm going to go back to autofill now, and I'm going to use a different kind of centrality, eigenvector centrality. Not only are you connected to a lot of others, but are you connected to others who are themselves connected to others and to a lot of others. And I'm going to use opacity for that, and I'm going to click that. What's that going to tell me? All of a sudden, these individuals over here on the edge speaking to each other, but not to many others, they turn out to really not be so central in terms of the eigenvector centrality, knowing the people who know others. For that, it's the folks that are in the middle of this network. So now what have we done? We've just verified with this actual data set about main political discussion, something that you might have learned in your textbook, which is that different kinds of centrality really reference different kind of ideas and describe different sets of people in the network. Okay. You have a lot of choices when you're doing visualization. And you'll notice I've made different choices here. I could reset these settings, and I could choose vertex color for betweenness centrality. And I could go to options, and I could say, well, let's create a heat map. Let's make this, let's the color red and kind of to blue, right? And let's swap the colors so that hot means really, the largest number in the column for betweenness centrality. And let's hit that and autofill. And let's find out where the colors lie. Okay, so we have a lot of really cool individuals and just one really hot one and a couple of purples. Who's that hot one? All for jury, right? Really, really, really between. Okay, I want you to experiment with these kinds of visualization methods. Do it with Les Miserables. Do it with a Twitter spigot. Those Twitter spigots could include a Twitter search for a hashtag, could be a Twitter search for a person, or it could be a Twitter users network. Okay, you could get that as well. You could even take a look at Twitter lists if you wanted, or mess with YouTube if you want to follow Jennifer Goldbeck's example. I leave that to you. But I hope that what I've provided you today is an example that you can work with to begin visualizing and experimenting beyond simply one of these algorithms that allows you to create different kinds of distributions of nodes. What do the colors mean? What does the opacity mean? If you have a smaller network, what do the line widths mean? Work with those and see what you can find out. I look forward to seeing your results, and have a good week.